Jonathan Taylor's been given permission to talk to other teams about a trade. Let's get into it. Earlier this offseason, Jonathan Taylor requested a trade from the Colts because they weren't going to re-sign him or give him a pay raise. And the Colts came out, Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, said they weren't going to trade him. And then this past week, Jim Irsay came out and gave Jonathan Taylor permission to talk to other teams about a potential trade. Now, one of the first teams that were linked to Jonathan Taylor were the Miami Dolphins, who missed out on Dalvin Cook, who ended up signing with the Jets. And then another team that was also named were the Bears. And I don't think a lot of people see the Bears as a potential suitor for Jonathan Taylor because they have a good, stable young running backs that include Khalil Herbert. And it really looks like he could be the starting running back next to Justin Fields this upcoming season. And the Colts are always looked at as a franchise that takes care of their players. But if you look at the history, it just seems like that there seems to be a continuous situation with the Colts and their star players. One of the famous instances is of Peyton Manning, who spent the majority of his career, obviously, with the Colts, but ended up going to Denver and winning a Super Bowl. And now it just seems like he associates himself more with the Denver Broncos instead of the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts trading Jonathan Taylor doesn't make much sense, with them taking Anthony Richardson and having a young quarterback under that contract. So if Anthony Richardson does end up being the star quarterback and the franchise quarterback that the Indianapolis Colts organization believes he can be in, it makes no sense not to have Jonathan Taylor. With Jonathan Taylor, you could give him his money and his extension, and then you would not have to worry about paying your quarterback in your cap space because you'll have Anthony Richardson on such a great deal on his rookie deal. And Jonathan Taylor, since being drafted in the league out of Wisconsin, has been one of the best backs in the NFL. While having a down year last year, yes, you could argue the Colts were one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL last season. And the Jonathan Taylor situation with the Colts also doesn't make a lot of sense when you consider this team needs as many playmakers as it needs. And it just going back to drafting a young quarterback and a raw quarterback with a ton of potential in Anthony Richardson, you just seem like you would want the most talent around him. And Jonathan Taylor qualifies as quality talent. And we are in this era of NFL teams not wanting to pay running backs. With that situation, this doesn't help Jonathan Taylor either. If he played any other position and was the same quality of player, he would have already had his extension, in my opinion. I am of the camp and of the belief of pay your good players, and Jonathan Taylor qualifies as one of the Colts' good players and arguably their best player. He has been their only offense for the past couple of seasons, and while, yes, having an injury down season last year, I believe he's in due for a bounce-back season. With Shane Steichen as the head coach and Anthony Richardson, while still growing as a passer, can make plays on the ground as well. The Colts offense is going to continue to get better, but I think taking away a star running back like Jonathan Taylor away from a young quarterback and a young play caller just doesn't fit right and isn't the right thing for this Colts organization. With all that being said, I think the Jonathan Taylor trade will be happening sooner rather than later. With teams wanting to get their roster set heading into the season, teams will want to do that sooner rather than later. And I think Jonathan Taylor ultimately does end up in Miami and becomes a Miami Dolphin. Now, Mike McDonald gets a lot of criticism, as last year the Dolphins did not run the ball a lot, but I just think they didn't have that workhorse running back. Yes, Raheem Mostert is a very quality running back, but he's not someone that you can give the ball to 15, 20 times a game. And Jonathan Taylor is that guy and has proven to be that guy. And with Jonathan Taylor in Miami, he will not have to see 7, 8 guys in the box, as teams will still have to guard Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And Tua has thrived in the Mike McDonald offense. The only thing that comes down to Tua is obviously his health. But with Jonathan Taylor in Miami, that makes the Dolphins a very prime contender in a loaded AFC. The Miami Dolphins were going to be my pick to win the AFC East anyway. Be on the lookout for that video coming very soon. But I think this just takes them even more over the top. While, yes, the Jets made the flashy moves and has very good young talent, their offensive line is still a question. The Bills are the Bills, but I think we could see a regression from Buffalo this year. And the Patriots just really don't have any offensive weapons. And that leaves the Miami Dolphins, who have the weapons, they have the defense, they have the star talent, they have the quality depth of the roster. And adding Jonathan Taylor, if this trade does end up happening, just puts them on that next level. And I think it makes them even closer to the likes of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think if Jonathan Taylor ultimately does end up with Miami, we'll see a more complete player. And I just think he'll get more balls out of the backfield just to get the ball to him in space, as in the Mike McDaniel offense likes to get his playmakers the ball in space. And I think we'll see that instead of Jonathan Taylor just smashing in the defensive linemen and linebackers for 20-25 carries a game. Jonathan Taylor unlocks any offense that he will ultimately end up in, but I think him ending in Miami just takes Miami to another level and ultimately takes Jonathan Taylor to another level when he was already a very good running back and arguably a top 3 running back in the NFL. The bright spot in all of this for the Colts, and while yes, I have already mentioned it, losing a player Jonathan Taylor's caliber with a young, raw quarterback isn't ideal, but depending on the picks and maybe even a player that they get, could really set them up nicely. But I still ultimately question getting rid of a player of Jonathan Taylor's caliber. Well, yes, he doesn't want to be in Indianapolis. He doesn't want to be in Indianapolis because they don't want to pay him, not because he doesn't like the team or the organization. Thank you for watching. As always, please like and subscribe. And let me know down in the comments, where do you think Jonathan Taylor ends up? And if he does end up in Miami, does that put Miami on the same pedestal as the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC?